Greetings, ghouls, and welcome to Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dave, and I am joined by the other host, Ike. Ike, how are you doing?
I'm doing spooky today. I'm very spooky today.
Me too, because we are deep into September, and from September 1st on, it's Spooktober here, and I am just knee deep in fall and Halloween and everything involved. This is my time of the year, so I couldn't be happier.
Oh Lord, it's like Christmas but better.
Yeah, I like Christmas too, but so like literally from like here to the end of the year is just this is my quarter of the year, and I prolong it as much as I can. But for all of you joining us, what this is it's a horror podcast, of course. It's in the title. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna review movies. We're gonna give you a little bit of news on stuff coming out, and then we're just gonna talk horror, anything horror related. Whether it be toys, TV, movies, whatever it is that strikes our interest. If you're into horror and all things spooky, well, this is your show. Like I said, I'm Dave. That's Ike. Make sure you subscribe to us. We're on all the podcast platforms out there. Just look up Listen to Their Screams and make sure you hit that subscribe so you get all the new episodes. And while we're talking, business here, let's plug the social media real quick so I don't forget to do that. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And all you have to do is looking up Listen to Screams. That is listen, the number 2 in Screams, or just look up Listen to Their Screams and make sure you follow us on those platforms. So, Ike, let's dive into it. I got a few news things about some movies coming out, and both in the theaters and on streaming and et cetera. So let's talk about some of these. I know you've seen, because I know you've been going nonstop, it seems like, to the movies and checking out some of these things. So right now, let's talk streaming first. Right now, some of the big titles out there streaming, and I think you've probably seen all these. Like I haven't yet. I'm still behind. But right now, the big ones out there are Nope, Orphan First Kill, and Black Phone. Those are all out there available digitally and streaming. I think you've seen all 3 of those, haven't you?
Yeah, I sure have. Sure have.
Yeah, you junkie.
I am really though.
Yeah. I'm a little behind, but so if you haven't seen those, I don't give anything away. But what do you what do you think of these 3? What are you liking? What are you not liking on these 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just kind of do it in the order that you gave it to me. We're going to start with Nope. Nope is fantastic. It is a Jordan Peele film. It has renewed my love for Keke Palmer, which, side note, if you haven't been looking, the internet has been driving it hard that they want Keke Palmer to be Rogue and the MCU's X-Men, which I love. But besides that, Nope is fantastic. It's not what you expected from start to finish. If you haven't catched it, or caught it, I should say. Catch is not a word. If you haven't caught it yet, pardon my poor grammar. Please watch it, honestly. It kind of tops off, I would say, Jordan Peele's trifecta, his trilogy, in a very, very nice way.
Yeah, his stuff's always good. His stuff's always good. It's some good flicks that he's putting out. So.
Oh, yeah. All of them are weirder than the one before it, so don't worry, it'll get weirder.
All right. What about Orphan First Kill?
Orphan First Kill, another fantastic movie. I love the first Orphan. Basically, in my opinion, if you've never seen it, one of the best plot twists in all of horror movies since like Saw. Orphan has such a good, I would say, a background. And Orphan First Kill really fleshes out the, I guess you could say, the mythos of the Orphan movie. Again, if you haven't seen it, it's literally on streaming for free as long as you have, what is it? Is it Peacock or is it Paramount?
I think it's on Peacock. Well, I don't know. I should have probably done that homework, but yeah, I'm not sure.
I want to say Paramount.
Yeah,
I want to say Paramount, but I couldn't. I could be wrong, guys.
So the internet's out there. Just Google it. It's easy to find out.
Yes, but yeah, Orphan First Kill, fantastic. It's on streaming. Honestly, I would have paid to go see it in the theaters. I watched it on streaming, but definitely, it's a lot gorier than the original film. So if you're okay with a little bit of blood and gore, I know I am. 100% watch it. Fantastic. And the other one, what was the other one you just said?
Black Phone.
Oh my God, Black Phone.
That one's been out a little bit.
Yeah. So here's what I'm gonna say. Am I allowed to curse? Am I allowed to say curse words?
Sure. We're a horror podcast. Why not?
I was just gonna make sure. I didn't know if this was gonna be a family-friendly horror podcast. I fucking love Ethan Hawke.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
fucking love Ethan Hawke. Oh my god, Ethan Hawke is one of those actors that I think one day will be regarded as one of the best, I would say, horror actors of our generation. Subtly, uh, he's in other movies like the first Purge movie, the first Insidious movie, but 100% Black Phone is a masterpiece, start to finish. I think you'd like it, Dave. It takes place like when you would have been a kid. Honestly, it would have been around that time, like the late '70s, early '80s, I think. Um,
I
if
figured there
I,
was a joke coming there about my age again.
I know if I would have said that, it would have been like the '40s when you grew up in World War II. But
Nah.
no, but 100% Black Phone's fantastic. It's an honestly all of these movies. I don't know if this is like 2022, the time for plot twists, but all of these movies have these really wonderful plot twists. Black Phone is no exception, but absolutely such a good movie. Great actor performances. I mean, I think they're also making a prequel to Black Phone, but that's a whole nother whole nother thing to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when more news comes out there. So let's talk about one since we're on the streaming thing right now. Let's talk about an upcoming movie that's coming out the 27th this month, September 27th, and this is the movie that we'll be talking about next week or next episode, The Munsters by Rob Zombie. I've seen lots of people apparently, and I'm not condoning this, not encouraging this, but apparently it's out there online for people to pirate and swipe. And I've seen lots of people talking about seeing it already online. And I people are so divided on this because people are either like, oh man, what are you doing? Why are you redoing this? Why are you making this movie? Don't touch it. People are saying it's ridiculous. And then some people are saying they love it. Now, the people that don't like it because I've heard people say that they don't like it because of the humor. I have to wonder whether they've saw the television series because it was a a comedic series. Um, I love the Munsters. I love that series. Love that show. And I am excited to see this because I know Rob Zombie is a huge Munsters fan, and I completely wholeheartedly trust him in making this movie. So I can't wait. It drops on the 27th. That's a week from when we're recording. We are going to review this on our next episode, and I can't wait to see this. I know it's an older show. It even predates me, obviously, but do you have much history in watching the Munsters?
So when this came out, I actually went on and I found some places to stream the Munsters. I mean, it's old enough that you can find it free a lot of places.
Yeah, yeah.
Here's the deal: the old Munsters, because I have a soft spot for black and white horror and horror comedy, and in that monster genre. Not as much as Dave. Dave is a huge geek
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
monster movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but this definitely takes a different spin on the monster movies. So I do like the monsters. I guess my primary concern is that I don't mind Rob Zombie. I didn't hate the Halloween remakes that he did, but I went back and I never watched his his Three from Hell series, and I watched that House of Thousand Corpses. It was good. Devil's Rejects, didn't care for it, and I couldn't bring myself to watch the last movie just because Devil's Rejects left such a bad taste in my mouth. So that's kind
Here's
of where
my
I'm coming from.
Yeah, here's my thing. I like Rob Zombie, right? I'm a fan of Rob Zombie. I've always loved his music. I was a huge fan of White Zombie,
Yeah.
and everything. And I'm a fan, and I love the fact that I have all these mutual interests with the guy. But my problem with is, man, he is so excessive. Like his Halloween remake, there was a natural stopping point in that movie, and it would have been a really solid movie. But then he went and like put a whole third act behind it, and it was a little much. And so I know Butch Patrick, the original Eddie Munster, has a bit part in this movie, and he's friends with Rob Zombie. I'm hoping he keeps some of that in check. We'll see. I don't know. And the thing is, people are talking like this has been the only thing that's been done since the original series, and there's been 3 or 4 made-for-TV movies and other attempts to reboot the Munsters and do different things. This is not the first attempt, and
No.
and trust me, those are not the greatest movies in the world. But and again, I wouldn't classify this as horror per se, but it's fallen in what we talk about because, like you said, it is Munster. It's a monster monster. It's a monster thing, right? It very much plays off of the old Universal monster with the main character, the Frankenstein character, the vampire character, a werewolf character, and everything. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping. I'm having faith because I'm one of those. I don't prejudge till I see it, and so I'm hoping. I'm hoping. But my thing is, if I don't like it, okay, that's cool. I'll go back and watch the original series, and no harm, no foul, whatever. I don't have to rewatch it again. Um, but anyway, like I said, we'll be reviewing that on our next episode, because I said, and because because I love it, and I'm could be a glutton for punishment. We'll see. So let's talk about then. Let's talk about theatrical stuff, and there are a couple. I'm just gonna hit a couple movies that are out. It's so wild because it feels like there is so much horror stuff out there and coming out. And I know it's that time of year,
Yeah.
but it still feels so heavy compared to. And I love it. Don't get me wrong, but it's honestly hard to keep up. And that's one thing that we hope to do here is to help you guys keep up on some of these things. But let's hit two titles that are out there in theaters right now that are kind of big names. How about Pearl and the Barbarian? Or just Barbarian. I'm sorry. I don't think it's the Barbarian. We're not talking Conan here. But although I do love Conan too. But anyway, Pearl, of course, is a prequel, right, to X, which to me was that was a surprise movie to me because I didn't really expect much out of it, and I loved it. And I know you saw Barbarian. Have you seen Pearl yet?
I haven't seen Pearl yet. Honestly, I was thinking about going and watching it, but this weekend. But I think I'm gonna go watch Don't Worry, Darling this weekend. So I haven't seen Pearl yet. I'll probably wait until it comes to streaming. But I have high hopes because, like you said, X. Wow, it really satiated that hunger for like a Texas Chainsaw-esque movie. Kind of in that realm. So yeah, I'm excited for Pearl. I think it'll be another surprise for us.
Yeah, part of my problem, like with the Barbarian, like I think Barbarian is an AMC only, right? Re-release right now because it's tied in with them. And my problem is I don't have an AMC within, it's about a half hour, a little more away. Our local theater is a small chain, so I have to make a commitment to go see it. On a side note, non-horror related, I will say that we had planned to go see Clerks 3 this past weekend. One of the Fathom events, we were going to drive. I was literally going to drive 40 minutes because I had to see this movie. And we went on to pre-buy our tickets and found out that just a day before we pre-bought our tickets, the theater that was showing the Fathom event had closed, just shut down. So there was no longer a Fathom event in my area. So talk about being a little pissed off. But we may touch on Kevin Smith in this because he has dabbled in some horror-esque type things. But
Red State.
yeah, Tusk. Yeah, but you have seen Barbarian, Ike, and you were singing the praises of Barbarian to me the other day.
So let me preface this because Dave kind of mentioned it earlier. We're both like this. We're both people who will not judge a movie until we watch it. We go into these movies with ready expectations, but something else that we're go ahead.
I was gonna say, and this might be what you're getting ready to say. To be fair, we also both like bad horror. I love bad cheesy horror, just like I love bad horror, science fiction. To me, bad and cheesy has a real strong place in horror. And I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and my God, that is the come on. But I watch that thing all the time. I love Reanimator. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And again, it's cheesy as hell. But to me, that adds to a good horror movie. So go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're okay. So keep that in mind. Obviously, if we say that we both love the movie, or if I say I love the movie, typically I'll let you know if it's gonna be like a cheesy movie. But here's the deal: I stepped into Barbarian, and I was very excited because number one, it has Bill Skarsgård in it, who is Pennywise from the current It movies, and I love a Skarsgård in pretty much anything. So Bill Skarsgård was in it. I like me some Bill, I like me some Skarsgård. So let me preface it with this because I'm not going to ruin the movie because I don't want to do that. But let's just say you get through partway of the movie and somebody pops up, and you actually mentioned Tusk. Justin Long is in Barbarian. He's not in the trailer, okay? So the trailer is completely misleading, but in a good way. The trailer basically shows nothing. The trailer gives you little crumbs. And those crumbs, it's like, imagine you pick up these crumbs and you're like, oh, is this cornbread? And then you get to the end of the crumb trail and you're like, what the hell? It's a brownie. That's what the movie is, right? It's dropping crumbs that look like this, but it's not. So you watch this movie, you're going to be completely surprised. About halfway through, I was sitting there saying to myself, what the fuck am I watching? But in a good way.
I tell you, to me, if you watch a movie and you're saying what the fuck, that can be a very good thing, because again, man, I love cheese. Some of my favorite things in the world are literally shit ass movies. I mean, and not just horror, just all around. And again, there's a lot of sentiment that's involved with movies, right? I mean, to me, movies, music, all that, it's such a personal thing. And I have movies that I love that I know they're shit movies. I know they're horrible movies. And I could point out their flaws if I wanted. But, they have sentimental value. And I mean, we're both positive
like
people.
Rad.
Oh, see, I should do a whole podcast on Rad. For those of you who don't know, there's that 80s BMX movie called Rad, and it is literally my favorite, probably my favorite movie of all time.
Are you wearing a Rad shirt?
Oh, actually, I am. Yeah, nobody will be able to see this, but I am wearing my Rad shirt right now. And it is outside of perhaps the original Star Wars trilogy, Rad is probably the movie I've watched the most in my life. I literally, as a child, recorded it off of HBO onto our Betamax recorder so that I could watch it all the time, and then run out in the yard and try to perform BMX tricks on my Murray bike. But anyway, that's a side note there. But so yeah, I mean, like Ike mentioned, and we'll get into this more because we're going to kind of do a little more introduction personally on us here in a little bit. But man, this podcast and what we do, we're not negative, right? We're not going to trash. We'll point out if there's flaws. Don't get me wrong, but we're more let's lean on the positives, because to me, I don't expect every movie I watch to be an Oscar-winning movie. And if I go into it and I come out and I say, hey, that was fun, that was, I enjoyed that, I'm good. If I didn't feel like I wasted an hour and a half of my life, and there are a few movies in my life that I have really felt that way, you will not hear about them here because they're not in this genre. But so we're very positive people. But like I said, we will tell you, hey, we're not speaking from a biased standpoint here. So spinning back, as Ike said, go watch Barbarian. Go watch everything, man. We support anything in theaters, because the more you support, the more money you spend, the more we'll get this stuff. So let's talk real quick about some movies that are coming up. And I believe these are all theatrical releases that are coming up. These are just, again, not everything, but we can't hit everything, or we literally have a 3-hour podcast. But let's drop a couple names here. On September 30th, we got Smile coming out. Ike, what do you know about Smile? Give me. I haven't really heard a lot about it. In a nutshell, do you know what it's about?
Roughly. So basically, you have, I can't remember the lady's name, but she's kind of making a reemergence in acting recently. But she basically, you have this character who is a psychiatrist. She has a patient who seems like she's schizophrenic, and long story short, she's seeing people smiling everywhere. But these people that are smiling, they're not your normal, typical smiles. These are some pretty fucked up, weird looking smiles, and these smiles are contagious, as in you have a week until you die. So I'm comparing it to probably like The Ring.
Yeah, it's like
the
Joker.
Bye Bye Man.
Joker meets The Ring.
Yeah, Joker meets The Ring. Bye Bye Man. Something in that realm. But it looks good. It has some interesting special effects that I've seen. I'm assuming most of them are CGI, no practical effects. They don't do that in Hollywood anymore. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, it looks good. I think I'll give it a shot. Like I said, manage expectations. I'm not expecting it to be Oscar winning, but looks good.
Yeah. And then, okay, let's do October 6th. Terrifier 2 is coming out. I'm ashamed to say that I've yet to watch Terrifier. It's every year it's on my list, and some reason I don't get to it. Have you seen the first Terrifier, Isaac?
Oh, let me tell you what. I am an Art the Clown stan. All right, here's the deal. I have watched everything that Art the Clown has ever been in. He was in oh shit, what are they called? Anthology movie called oh hell, I can't remember what it's called now. Jeez, Days of Halloween or something like that, or yeah, something of that nature. But basically, Terrifier 1 is probably in my top 10 favorite horror movies. It is Art the Clown is such a weird like horror movie villain that's like a combination of all of your favorite horror movie villains, but he's also a clown that's like super like cynical and sinister. Oh man.
I mean, clown alone is terrifying enough.
Right.
I mean, clowns can be creepy. So you're super pumped for this then, right? On October, I got October 6th, the second one dropping. You must be super psyched.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go see it opening night, hopefully.
but let's talk about here. Let's talk about the big cheese of the season.
Oh yeah.
Of course, October 14th, And of course, we will be covering this shortly after its release. Halloween Ends. Now, to say that Ike and I are both fucking just Halloween junkies, I mean, we're taking that stuff straight in the vein. And when we talk about, like I said here in a bit, the more personal and our starts and everything, background in horror, you're going to hear about Halloween a lot because it plays a big part for both of us. I like this trend. Don't get me wrong. I love in each of their own ways. I like all the Halloween movies.
Yeah.
So, some are obviously better than others. I like them all. Going back to my note of being, a cheesy fan, I fucking love Halloween 3.
Okay.
One of my favorites. But I do like this where the creators are going back and taking it from the original, the hit, so to speak, right? What broke the franchise and retelling and kind of telling their story, their version of it, right? Before it got out of their hands. So I like this new timeline here. I've really enjoyed the movies. Of course, again, you've got to take it with a grain of salt, right? People that are picking apart, give me a break, man. I mean, why do you even watch horror if you don't think there's going to be some supernatural aspects or some? I mean, come on. I know there's talk that this is going to happen with Friday the 13th, right? The original creator of the first movie is supposedly got the rights back, and he's saying that next year he's going to have a new movie, and he's doing the same thing, right? From the first movie, he's telling his story. But I could not be more ready for Halloween Ends, and I believe. I tell me if I'm wrong here. I believe this a simultaneous theatrical streaming release like the other ones.
Yeah, it's going to be on. Oh man, I believe this one's on Peacock. I think
I think it's a Peacock. Yeah.
Yep, it's going to be Peacock in theaters. But here's the deal, guys, and I just want to make this known for everybody. This will most likely be the last time that we see Jamie Lee Curtis in the role of Laurie Strode. So, obviously, if you want to go to theaters, I'd highly recommend it. I told my wife we are going to the theaters because I will not be satisfied with seeing that movie on a small screen. I need to see it on the big screen. I need to see Jamie Lee Curtis's big hurrah on the big screen because, oh my God, I love Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, again, we encourage, we understand, right? Everybody's got their own situations. We understand it.
Yeah.
Hey, there's still stuff going on in this world, and not everybody's comfortable with going to theaters. If you can, go to a theater though and support this stuff, and then rewatch it on streaming, right?
Oh yeah.
Watch it again because, again, we want this stuff to succeed. We want this stuff to continue to be made, and the cool thing is, horror fans, man, they'll spend money, right? That's why we're getting this stuff. So, but I am so psyched for this movie. I cannot wait. I have loved the two that they've done recently. They're fun, and again, Jamie Lee Curtis is she's the queen, and she is great. And I love how much she loves this role. I love how much she plugs it on her social media and talks about it, and is totally just enveloped in the I am Laurie Strode thing. And it's so great, man. I mean, and again, that comes out October 14th. Like I said, go see it. Go see it a lot. Watch it on streaming a lot. It's going to be fun. And again, don't get caught up in the bullshit, right? Have a beer and enjoy yourself and watch the movie. And man, don't be over analytical. It's entertainment for a reason. So that's all I've got as far as kind of newsworthy stuff. And some of the streaming and theatrical news that's coming out. Let's take a brief pause here. And like I said, when we come back, we're gonna introduce ourselves, and we're gonna talk a little about our backgrounds and bullshit with you a little bit on horror. So stick around.
Good evening. You are just in time for a horrible night's fright. For you are now in Sammy Terry's Chamber of Horrors. And I am Sammy Terry.
All right, and we're back on Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast. And now we're going to talk about us, right? We're going to do a lot of movie reviews, and we're going to talk about movies and all that stuff. But right now, let's talk about why we're doing this, right? Why do we like horror so much? How did we first get introduced to horror? And what's going to be cool is there's a generational difference here, right? There's 20 years difference in age between me and Ike. So it's two different things, right? There's two different aspects to this on how, but you're going to see similarities, right? It is what it is. So let me talk a little bit about how my first memories of quote unquote horror and monsters. Again, like I said, I love monster movies, right? I love the Universal monsters. I love Hammer horror. Universal's my jam, though, right? The old black and white movies, I watch those things all the freaking time. I do not think you'll ever get a better 1-2 punch of movies than Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, ever, period. Watch those two back to back. I mean, the two movies combined are only 2.5 hours. And they are so spectacular. And part of what, there's two aspects that brought me into this genre and what hooked me. And with people my age and older, it was here. The first one is the typical vein of horror hosts. When I was a kid, and I grew up in Indiana, on WTTV4 out of Indianapolis, we had a horror host called Sammy Terry. Mm-hmm. Every Saturday night, he did his show, and he showed mostly monster movies. And I would stay up and watch these things with the lights off. It scared the piss out of me as a little kid. And I was hooked right from the get-go. I was fascinated. And that was my start, right? It was watching, I spent a lot of weekends at my grandma's and watching Sammy Terry on weekends, on Saturday night, and watching these monster movies is how I got into this. And I was hooked from then on, period. That was the thing. And then what was even better about it was then as I got hooked, we were in the 80s, which was prime time for slasher. And I mean, think about all these movies that came out in the late 70s and blossomed in the 80s when you're talking about the Halloweens and the Nightmares and the Friday the 13th. Those were all, I mean, those were then, right? And they were everywhere. So I know, again, you're 20 years younger than me. Horror hosts are still a thing, right? There's still Svengoolie out there. There's still, Joe Bob Briggs and all that stuff. Elvira still does her thing. Do you have a lot of memories of horror hosts, though? I mean, is there much of that you personally know?
I do have like a very small recollection of Sammy Terry because I also grew up in Indiana. But outside of that, I knew of like for instance like the Crypt, like was it the Crypt Keeper from Tales from the Crypt?
Yeah, Tales from. I mean, that was great. I remember when that came out on HBO. I mean, that was the best shit. I mean, based on EC Comics, which I read. I mean, so it was. I mean, yeah, that was great. I mean, seeing that stuff again, that's the same type thing. That's a horror host, type of format. So yeah, I mean again, that's a very 80s version, 80s take on the horror movies. And again, the 80s is when 80s and 90s when Elvira was huge, and she was in commercials and everything else.
No, that's what I was gonna say. I mean, I feel like for me because I'm a 90s baby, so I grew up in mid to late 90s, so. I think I was kind of past like that precipice of like the horror hosts. I knew of them, especially as I got older. Looking back, you can't look back at horror as a whole without acknowledging those horror hosts, because those horror hosts really, I feel like, pushed along a lot of these different movies and stuff. So for me, I think that the biggest thing was my mom. My mom was a horror fan growing up, and so anytime she would be watching a movie. As a kid, I would sneak out of my room and I would try and catch, whatever she was watching. So I remember, there was an old movie. I'm trying to remember. It was a John Carpenter movie. It was like The Serpent and the Rainbow or something like that. And I just remember on the cover is a guy under like a floorboard. So that's like my first like memory of horror, is like trying to like watch these movies. And then eventually, as I got a little bit older, my mom finally was like, yeah, you can watch horror movies. And the first horror movie I ever watched was the theatrical version. I should say the TV version of Halloween.
Yeah. I mean, man, I mean, literally that birthed so many people, right? Their interest. I mean, in fact, that this had a television, a television airing, it was pretty remarkable and brought a lot of people into the genre. And I'm going to guess. Let me talk about my second aspect, though, which I'm this is going to have a lot of crossover for you, sort of. My second aspect that brought me into horror were books.
Yeah.
But now there's going to be two different veins here with me and you, and I'm going to guess what yours is. Let me talk about mine, and then I'm going to guess what a book aspect for you. When I was a kid, in the same vein as these monsters, right? And all the Universal monsters and King Kong and Godzilla and all these things, there was this book series called Crestwood that were in every school library I would venture to guess around the world. And look them up if you're not familiar with these. They are these cool books. I've got a couple that I bought on eBay since. And there was one on Dracula, one on Frankenstein, one on the Wolfman, one on anything that was a monster or a creature out there. And there were these cool books that had lots of pictures and little, some text, but they were written for kids. They were aimed for elementary school kids. I checked these things out so many times from my library, all the time. And that was the second thing, that once I was hooked by Sammy Terry, back then especially, you went to the library, you went to the school library, and you looked these things up. And that's what I came across. And they were so amazing. And these books are such a big part and are so important to me in my love of horror. Now, let me bridge that. I'm guessing that books played a big part in yours too, but in your time period, it would have been R.L. Stine and Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Because here we have these spooky, and again, there's still cool stuff no matter what your age, these cool, spooky, horror-esque stories. And don't get me wrong, some of this shit was scary even for adults. I mean, if you take a ventriloquist dummy, that's scary shit. And I'm going to guess, because a lot of people your age, that was a huge gateway drug to horror.
Honestly, now that you say that, I guess technically Halloween would be the first actual horror movie that I watched. But growing up, I always read and watched Goosebumps. And I also read like Fear Street, because Fear Street was more 90s, but being in the early 2000s in an elementary school, you still had those Fear Street books. So I read Fear Street. I read
was Fear Street R.L. Was that R.L. Stine also?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, absolutely. Because now that you say that, I've been watching Goosebumps for as long as I can remember. And honestly, every October, I circle back and I watch Goosebumps because it's on Netflix for people who are curious. But yeah, absolutely. And at some point, and no spoilers, Dave and I are actually going to talk about our favorite TV specials in the vein of horror. So
that's an upcoming episode. That's actually going to be our Halloween special this year. So again, TV episodes, specials, etc., from 20 years apart, man, it's gonna be a trip to see the difference. But yet you're going to be able to see how there's still this, what do you call it? It's the same shit though. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's just culturally time periods are different. It's the same thing whether it's me going to the library in elementary and middle school and looking up these Crestwood books and reading about these, to you going and doing Goosebumps and reading about these. It's the same concept, right? It's a culturally acceptable avenue for someone that age.
Yep.
Because lots of parents, my parents, they're not into horror. My mom is skittish at everything, right? She is scared of everything. She would not watch a horror movie. I would venture to guess she has never watched a horror or monster movie in her life, ever. But I stayed up and watched Cemetery. I read these books and everything, and it was so out there. And but I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But yeah, we're going to do this thing. A plug. Yeah, it's our Halloween special for this year. We're going to do a thing on TV specials, our favorite TV specials. But I didn't mean to sidetrack you. You were talking Goosebumps and Halloween specials, and go on.
No, I was just going to say I go back and watch them every year. But and to kind of elaborate on what you said, I guess it's a little bit different for me because both of my parents love horror movies. So I've been kind of, I don't want to use this term because it's typically negative, but I've been indoctrinated into the horror. I've been indoctrinated into the horror. But oh man, like Goosebumps, man, that stuff used to scare the absolute piss out of me. I was afraid to wear a Halloween mask after watching The Haunted Mask from R.L. Stine. I was like, shit, I don't want to wear a Halloween mask.
The ventriloquist dummy always got me because I always had a fear of things like that. I hate dolls, man. I fucking hate dolls, and I hate. It's not mannequin. Mannequins don't bother me, but although if you've ever watched the Auton thing and Doctor Who, mannequins creep me a little, but I hate like wax figures and things like that are kind of realistic looking, where you look at them, you're like, fuck, it's like I can see a soul in these things. And
it's actually that's actually a very common phenomenon. So this is horror related, but also science. I'm gonna give you guys some brain fuel here. So that's very common because it's called the uncanny valley. So what it is that as a species, we are trained to like as like a primal instinct. If something looks human-esque or close to human, but there's something off, we are built primally to be unnerved by that because a lot of people think that it's possible that when we were, when we were like still Neanderthals and stuff, that when the Homo sapiens evolved from like the Neanderthals, that our our biology was trying to prevent us from like interbreeding. So we didn't like Neanderthals because of the uncanny valley. So that's just a little science fact that kind of relates. But yeah,
well,
no, I hate dolls too.
well, I mean, like literally, here's a little story about me. When I was a kid, we had this. I don't know what it was. It was like a surplus type store, like a hardware surplus. It was this weird ass store. And it was huge, and it sold a lot of lumber and hardware type stuff, but it had a little bit of everything. And it was big, right? It was like this warehouse looking thing. And my dad went there all the time, and I always went with him because I liked fucking looking and plundering and shit. But they had these two, I don't know what they were, these wax figure type things that they would pose in these weird displays. There was a man and a woman. But the thing is, they changed it like almost every week and put it in these new displays. And it wasn't always in the same spot. So I would walk this store with this chill in my spine, knowing that I could walk around the corner and see these damn things and be terrified. And they were always like on this, like a lawn furniture display or a camping display. But those things, they haunted me. I hated those things. I would have nightmares about those things. But anybody that knows me knows dolls. Fucking hate dolls. I do not like dolls. I do not like. I mean, which is weird because I love action figures and stuffed animals and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. There's something about dolls, especially like old ass porcelain dolls. And this predates Annabelle and any of that shit. But it's I don't trust them. I think
Actually, Dave and I have a mutual contact that we know who used to own a doll store.
Oh God.
And anytime we would enter that doll store, I mean, I know for me it was always creepy, especially when you turn the lights off and you're closing up for the night, you're walking through, you're just like, yeah, no fucking thank you. No fucking thank you.
Okay, let's get off the dolls. So anyway, so yeah, again, horror host, these books at the library were, and then again, I was in the 80s boom with theater, or not theater, excuse me, video stores, and the fact that you could go in and get all these horror movies. And I would go to my cousin's house a lot, and we would rent this shit and watch it on Fridays and Saturday nights, and scare the piss out of us. And of course, we'd sleep with the lights on all night and stuff. And it was always a thing where I would just, we'd rent whatever. I mean, I was hooked from the initial, but I always, when I sit down, I mean, there are certain, I love it all. But when I sit down and I watch, just a comfort movie that I want to have on that I don't have to pay close attention to, I do tend to lean towards the monster stuff. But again, going back to what I said earlier, my favorite horror type movies are pretty damn cheesy. I mean, I love Reanimator. I said that earlier. I stand by it. I know it's an H.P. Lovecraft thing. I love H.P. Lovecraft. But that fucking movie is so good, and I watch it so much. The others, they're not as good. That first one though, I mean, it is great. I love it. So, Ike, if you had to pick a guilty pleasure movie that a lot of people bash and hate on within the genre that you like to watch and like to rewatch, could you come up with one?
Oh yeah, I mean, I could come up with tons. I would say the one that I feel like gets a lot of hate, that it's kind of in my wheelhouse, but it is kind of cheesy, is Sleepaway Camp.
Oh yeah, that's another one. Literally a top 10 movie for me.
Love it.
That's one of those movies when I watched it way, way, way back, fucking blew my mind. It's one of those things I didn't expect where it was going. You could kind of figure out who the killer was. Yeah. And again, this movie is so old that I'm not giving a spoiler warning on this movie. If a movie is 20 or 30 years old, if you ain't seen it, I'm sorry if we spoil it. But it's one of those movies that you kind of see who the killer is. You're anticipating that, but then that twist at the end. And my God, Felissa Rose, she's intensely one of my horror crushes now. I love how she's embraced this role from so long ago and does all these conventions and it still does the pose and that look and does these these pictures with people. I love that. I love people that embrace what got them there and really, drink it in. But yeah, Sleepaway Camp, it's one of my favorites too.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I love Sleepaway Camp. I even like the sequels. The sequels are really bad, honestly. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
And if you don't like Sleepaway Camp, the sequels are they're awful. But it's actually funny. Her name's Pamela Springsteen. She's Bruce Springsteen's sister. Plays I can't remember the character's name now. I haven't watched it in a while. But yeah, plays her in the other movies. But oh yeah, Felissa Rose. This is the best twist, the best.
Yeah. Felissa Rose, man, I tell you what, I went to a horror convention here. I think it was earlier this year. Yeah, actually, it was earlier this year. Sorry, man, time just drags. And we were at a panel. I don't even remember what the panel was. We were going into it though, and her panel had just finished. We were at DJ Qual's panel, so we missed hers. And when we went in, and she was still standing there, and she just like starts talking like to us, like we're just, like it's anyway. And I'm sitting there just like, literally my wife's like having to wipe the drool off my chin because here's Felissa Rose standing here, and I'm like, like God, I like literally should have said, hey, can I get a selfie with you? Even though I know she was selling that shit, I thought I should have went for it right then. But yeah, so let's talk. You brought it up earlier, and I don't watch as much, but let's talk about like horror, like TV type series. You brought up Tales from the Crypt, which I love. Tales from the Crypt until you get towards that last season, and the last season's rough. But those early, man, those are great. What's some other TV type series that you like that are kind of based in the horror, the monster, the spooky shit?
Honestly, there are a lot of newer stuff that I've watched recently. It's a little teeny bop, but I like the Scream TV show. Scream TV is pretty good. I like it's called Slasher. It's actually pretty solid. It's sort of an anthology-esque series. Speaking of anthology-esque, I love oh my God, what was it called? Maybe it is Tales from the Crypt. Did they remake that on Shudder?
No, Creep Show.
Creep Show, yeah. Oh yeah, man, yeah. The Creep Show on Shudder. Oh,
have you ever seen the original Creep Show movie?
I have watched Creep Show 2, the original Creep Show 2.
No. You got to watch the first. That's Stephen King shit, man. That's him writing some anthology shit. It was a comic and everything. Like it's good stuff with the Creep and all that. Very very EC Comics derivative, but that's good stuff.
But no, but Slasher, Chucky, that was the other one.
Chucky, yeah, Chucky's great, man. Here's the thing, I love Child's Play, love it, great movie. Plays right into my hate for dolls, but it's especially for a child of the '80s and knowing that they had these, My Buddy dolls at the time, and Chucky's just a goof on that. But then a lot of the sequels are really, really not that good.
Oh my God!
And I would never rewatch it, but man, the series is great.
Yeah, up until the third movie. After the third movie, that's where I kind of drop off because that's like Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky. I just no. Those are almost too cheesy for me.
Yeah, and I like cheese, so I've seen them all, but it's like most of them I will not go back and rewatch. Again, anybody that knows me knows that I love the Supernatural series. Like I'm obsessed with the Supernatural series, and it plays right into my love of monsters, and and all that. And besides, Jensen Ackles is fucking god. I pretty much watch him in anything. Although, have you ever seen Devour?
I think we have it on Vudu. For people who don't know, use Vudu. It's great, but I've not watched it.
God, it's horrible. I couldn't finish it. I couldn't. I can get through anything, and I could not get through that movie with an actor that I really love. It is horrific. I still could not tell you what that movie's even about. No clue. It's so bad. And but hey, like Padalecki, man, I love Padalecki in the Friday the 13th remake.
People shit on that one a lot too, but it's good.
I love it. And I actually, I don't call it a remake per se. I don't know it's kind of a reboot to me because they kind of leave some of the original happenings in place going into that movie.
Honestly, and this is a hot take, and this might be a hot take for some people, but the Friday 13th remake did what I think they should have done with the original Friday 13th, is condense the first three movies really into one movie. Because don't get me wrong, I like Friday 13th, but I don't really care for part one for people who are curious. I think Pamela Voorhees is a subpar horror movie villain. Don't get me wrong, it's a good movie overall for the history, all that good shit. But the Friday 13th remake did exactly what I think they should have done, which is combine those first three movies, and it was pretty good. I liked
it. Combine them into the intro credits.
Exactly.
But see, that's what I'm saying, though. Hopefully, when they restart this franchise, and this guy's saying he's just going to start from the first movie on, hopefully that's, maybe that's kind of what we'll get. We'll get something like that, But so again, we're talking here personally, and again, I'm obsessed with this shit. I go to conventions, I collect figures, and I watch pretty much everything. But even on my level, I don't watch everything that Ike watches. I mean, and here we are though in our time of the year in September. That's why we're kind of kicking this off at this time, because we wanted to kind of introduce it from September and then really dive into it in October, because of course everybody thinks of Halloween when they think of October. But really, I mean, it's kind of a Halloween all year for me kind of thing, because I don't really stop watching these things. Maybe not to the level that I watched during this time, because I pretty much watch nonstop. But we will talk in future episodes, given that it's October and it's this time of year, on some of our personal experiences and happenings and what we're doing through the season, if we're seeing anything and doing anything to celebrate, this time of year. Again, our house was decorated up September 1st. I just couldn't wait any further than that. I've got all the monster stuff out and everything, and I'm constantly adding. And I'm a sucker, man. I'm a sucker. Again, anybody knows me. I'm a sucker for novelty candy. I mean, you could take a candy bar and put it in the form of a jack-o'-lantern or a ghost, and I'm hooked. And so we'll talk about. Oh my God! Well, I love Reese's.
I love Reese's. Oh yeah.
So
butter and chocolate.
So we'll talk about that through October too, and what we're doing at that time as we review movies and everything else. But I've even been talking, man. I've always been so adamant about not having. My wife's always been pushing me to have a Halloween tree, like a Christmas tree, and I've always been nope. Trees are for Christmas. Trees are for Christmas. And then I saw a picture online of a black tree with these jack-o'-lantern things on them and everything. I thought, fuck, that looks so cool. So now I'm like, you know what? I need a black tree. And I'm literally now at some point in October probably going to put up a Halloween tree. And it is what it is. I guess I shouldn't fight the urge. But so anyway, I kind of sidetracked there. And I guess it should be noted to everybody there that I am drinking through this podcast and drank a little before. So if I am rambly, it might be a little bit of that too. But so talking about our personal background horror, Ike, anything else you want to touch on there? Because like I said, we talked about when we first kind of experienced horror and monster stuff. We talked about the books and that how that helped kind of bridge the gap. Anything else there that kind of helped that hooked the claws in you of horror?
Honestly, I think the only thing I would say is, with Halloween having been like kind of my introductory like horror film into the world of horror, and like all the movies that I've watched since, something that you'll learn is that I am a fiend for slasher movies. Slasher movies is probably, I think, the best horror movie like genre. I like the other ones. I like paranormal. I like all that stuff. But slasher movies will always be my forever favorite. I mean, we were just talking about how much I love Halloween, Sleepaway Camp. I literally watch all these shows about like slashers. But slashers, that is my meat and potatoes. Terrifier at the slasher, so good. That's my favorite though. Slashers.
I mean, but that's what when most people think horror, that's what they think of, right? Yeah. That's what comes to mind. And again, that's at least previously, that's where the money was always made. Oh, those were the franchises that spawned 7 sequels and everything else. And I mean, in the 80s, that's pretty much what you got. It was all that. And I'll tell
for
you
better
what.
or for worse.
It was such a great time to be alive. It was. I mean, and again, and like we talked about the books and everything. When I was a kid, it was such a big thing. Fangoria magazine was such a big thing, and what was cool is it seemed so taboo, right? It was one of those things of, oh, you shouldn't look at that, because it was, it was like, this blood and gore in it. But man, it was so cool, and it just fed it even more. But it's so wild now to think, and not just with horror, with everything, how much there is out there to consume, whether whether it be movies or products and toys and shirts and everything. I mean, I'm looking over here at some of my figures, and I have a Herbert West from Reanimator, a figure of him. And when I was young watching that movie, I would have never thought that there would have been a Herbert West action figure. It just you couldn't even comprehend that. But when kids like me at that time that were into that stuff grew up and we had the money, that's what they started making. And it's such a cool time when there's so much stuff out there. I mean, it's literally, you can't keep up with it, right? You can't get it all, and it's almost impossible to watch it all. There's just so much out there, and it's such a cool thing.
I'm gonna certainly try and watch as much of that shit as I can. I'm gonna consume that until my eyeballs rot out of my head.
That should be the tagline of this podcast too, right there. Where that's what we're here for. So if you're listening, and that's what if you're a horror, monster film junkie, horror junkie, all that stuff. I mean, hey, we're your brethren. That's what we are. We love this stuff. And then and again, it's a safe space, man. We're not here to rip anything apart. We're not here to die, to tell you so much review stuff, and so many people out there that are like, oh, this movie was horrible, blah blah blah, but yet they go and see it 5 times. I'm like, why are you going to see it if you hate it that much? I mean, I hate Coyote Ugly, and I'm not going to rewatch that movie again because I hate it so much. But so probably the worst movie of all time in my book. I hate that movie.
That's a Mrs. Dynasty favorite.
Oh God, I hate that movie. Hate it with a passion. Yes, I won't watch it with her. Just not happening. Not again. Never again. But so anyway, like we said, this is a safe space for you. We're positive dudes. You're gonna hear some fun banter here, and we're gonna tell you why we like this stuff. And chances are better not, no matter what it is, if it fits the genre, we're gonna like it. So in some capacity, because again, it's entertainment, it's fun, it's meant to escape for 2 hours and not think of the real world for a while, and that's what it's for. It's not there to split apart and worry about the details. Now, don't get us wrong. If something's glaring, we're going to tell you. But we're not here to be negative Nellies, so to speak. So there you have it. A little background on us, our starts in horror, what we're about. Hopefully you'll go out and hopefully we didn't chase you off already with our ramblings today. This was supposed to be just kind of a very loose form episode so that you could get a feel for us in our backgrounds. But like we said, next episode, we're diving right in with our first review, and it's going to be of the new Rob Zombie Monsters movie that is coming out on Netflix. And we're coming from two veins here. A guy who loved the Munsters, a guy who's, Ike's not as big into it as I am, not as familiar with it as I am. So we're going to get two takes on it. It'll be interesting to see what we think. So check that out next episode. Like I said, follow us on all the social medias. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. Just look up Listen to Screams. That is Listen, the number 2, and then Screams. We're on all those. That's where you can catch us all. And make sure you subscribe to us and leave us a review and share us on whatever platform you're listening to. So, Ike, before we get out of here, any closing comments, anything else you want to throw in and add before we get out of here for this episode?
If you want to scream with us, just listen to their screams, listen to your own screams, listen to our screams. Let's listen to screams together.
That's right. Speaking of, I'm a very easily startled person. I scream quite a bit. Have you ever heard the story of me and White Noise, the stupid movie White Noise with Michael Keaton?
No, I don't think I don't think I've heard that.
Totally in a theater watching that movie, and there's that part where there's the screen with the static on it.
Yeah.
And he leans in real close, and that face appears on it. Fucking in a theater, pretty full theater, watching this movie, and and it gets to that point, and literally no one else in the theater makes a noise, but I screamed like a 13-year-old girl when that face popped in there. It was kind of embarrassing, but I didn't care. It startled. I'm easily startled. So yes, plenty of screams here. So wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, have fun, and have, as Sammy Terry always said, pleasant nightmares.